Alright, so one of the biggest what-ifs ever in Blue Lock for me is in the second selection, where I have always wondered what would happen if, instead of Isagi joining with Bachira, he actually switched up on his day 1 and left with both Nagi and Ryo instead. So let's get right into talking about it. So let's head all the way back to the second selection, where we see Isagi and Bachira meeting up after just completing their task against the Blue Lock keeper. Isagi and Bachira are obviously very glad to see each other, firstly because they were a real power combo in the first selection, but not to mention that seeing a familiar face always feels nice. Bachira asked Isagi who their third player would be, and Isagi was just a bit shocked that he had already included Isagi in his team. Anyway, they settled to wait and see whether Chigiri or Kunigami would finish first, and then team up with one of the other. But suddenly someone called out for Isagi, and it was Nagi. Nagi, as we all know, asked Isagi to go with him and join together with Ryo and himself. Ryo was firstly a bit hesitant, but I think that he was just salty that Nagi wanted to invite the very player who crushed them. Bachira then asked Isagi what he was going to do, and here is where it all changes, as Isagi thinks to himself. He thinks back to their game, and he thinks about how good Nagi was in that game, as he was basically unstoppable, and he wasn't even serious for most of the match. But he then looks over to Bachira, and thinks that this is the guy that has been by him through everything up until now. So could he really do something like this to him, and basically stab him in the back? Nagi asks Isagi what it will be, and Isagi firstly looks towards the ground and says, "Sorry." Nagi says that he understands, but Isagi interrupts him and says that he wasn't talking to Nagi, but instead Bachira. He finally looks up and we can see his eyes being inflamed with a super strong aura as he tells Bachira that in their last game, Nagi was unbelievable and if he wants to get better, he has to join them. Bachira looks a bit sad, having just lost Isagi to Nagi. However, he tells Isagi that he better not lose and that he will get his revenge on him for switching up. Isagi just says that he better do that, and they then shake hands before he leaves with Nagi and goes towards Ryo. Ryo just looks at Isagi, still having that annoyed look in his eyes, and Isagi just wonders what his deal is before asking Nagi why he wanted him on his team. Nagi then gets this insane aura, just like in the original timeline, and we see him looking super fired up as he tells Isagi that in their last game he felt something he had never felt before, and he could have never imagined losing before. And because of that, he needed to figure out the root of this frustration he was feeling, and says that it's the reason he had to play with Isagi. Isagi laughs, and tells him that he gives him way too much credit, and they then start to walk towards the 3 vs 3 room. In the hallway towards the 3 vs 3 room, Isagi tells Ryo that it will be a pleasure to play with him. Ryo just tells him that if he's honest, then he doesn't care about Isagi, and that he's only doing this for Nagi. But either way, he takes out his hand towards Isagi and says that he will try and get along the best that he can to satisfy Nagi. Isagi then smiles and thinks that Ryo might not be so bad after all, and they shake hands. After that, they get into the 3 vs 3 room, where they spot Rin, Aryu, and Tokimitsu, who had already formed a team, and then Ego popped up on the screen, telling them that it all starts now. But before that, we get to Kunigami and Chigiri, who had just finished the training with the Blue Lockman. Chigiri arrived first, so he was already with Bachira, and Kunigami then went to join them. Kunigami asked Bachira where Isagi was, and Bachira told him that he went with Nagi and Ryo. Kunigami says that he didn't think that Isagi would leave him, and Chigiri says that he thought the same thing. However, Bachira tells them not to worry, and he starts to look wild as he says that this only made him more fired up than ever, as he wants to play against Isagi and show him how strong he really is. And then the 3 of them form their own team together. Back to Ego, where he has just explained to them about the 3 vs 3 matches, and that it's the first to 5 goals with the Blue Lockman as goalkeeper, and also how the winning team would get the chance to steal one of the other players. All of them understand it, and just like in the original timeline, Isagi thinks that it's not like they have to fight against the ones who are already here right away. Nagi then thinks that it would be good to fight against teams where they have players they would want to steal, and instead of Kunigami and Chigiri, Bachira pops into Isagi's head in an instant. After that, he overhears how Rin is going on about destroying Sei. And you know, Rin is just being Rin basically, which flips a switch in Isagi as he asks Ryo and Nagi if they are fine with whoever, and he looks at Rin, telling him that they should play. Rin, however, coldly tells him that anyone is fine, and Isagi then gets serious as he says that he wants him, and just like that, the game starts. Isagi begins to pass to Nagi, and Tokimitsu goes to block him. Nagi just calls it a hassle, and he passes the ball to Ryo on the other side. Ryo gets the ball, but is faced with Aryu. Ryo looks at Isagi, who calls out for him to play with him. However, Ryo doesn't seem to care, and he instead dribbles around Aryu. Isagi gets a bit mad, but anyhow, Nagi has gotten a bit up on the field now, so Ryo sends across to him, but Rin is now in front of him. Nagi thinks about what to do, but that's when Isagi screams his name, and we see him clear to his right, and Nagi passes him, which lets Isagi score easily. Nagi and Isagi goes to celebrate together, and Isagi looks over at Ryo, who continues to have this annoyed face on himself, kind of like he doesn't like seeing Nagi being so interactive with Isagi. But suddenly, as Tokimitsu starts to freak out, wondering what they should do, Rin comes by with the ball and says that he now understands what level Isagi's team is, and just tells them how insane lukewarm they are. All of them is just in shock, as they just took the lead. But Rin then placed the ball down at the start line before he shoots it right into the goal, while not looking bothered at all. Everyone, and I mean everyone, is in total shock by this. Meanwhile, Rin just tells them that they are a waste of time and that they should just end it already, and the real deathmatch then starts. Anyway, the match restarts again with Team Isagi having the ball. Isagi passes to Nagi. Nagi once again gets blocked by Tokimitsu. He looks over to Isagi this time, but he sees that Isagi already has enough trouble as it is, as Rin is in front of him, and he knows that Ryo is on the other side. So he tries to send a cross, but Ryu then jumps into the air and steals it. The ball falls to Tokimitsu. Now Nagi tries to do his best to stop him, but he isn't even able to move Tokimitsu a little bit. Tokimitsu, however, gets a bit confused about what to do with the ball, so he sends it to Ryu up on the attack. Now luckily, Isagi had fallen back and is there. However, Ryu's reach and overall abilities are just way above Isagi at this point, so he gets to score with little to no effort. Isagi is mad that he couldn't do anything while the others just stayed quiet. This time he knows that they need to switch up, so as they restart the game, he screams to Ryo that they need to play together, and he sends him a pass. Ryo looks at him and sighs before he looks over to Nagi, firstly because he isn't that interested in passing Isagi, but also because he can see Rin being close to Isagi, so not to risk anything, he sends it to Nagi. Now Nagi traps it flawlessly like always, but that's when Tokimitsu decides to participate, as before Nagi could even realize it, Tokimitsu had started sprinting towards him at full speed. However, Nagi knew that he couldn't let this ball go, so he quickly chopped the ball over Tokimitsu. Nagi continued, and he thought it was fine, but it wasn't long before he saw Tokimitsu right by him, and before he could realize, Tokimitsu had already taken the ball off him as he screamed that he also wanted a goal. Ryo was already focused on keeping Ryu in check, so Isagi tried to stop the incoming beast. However, firstly, due to the sheer surprise of his evolution, and just by the fact that he is a complete beast, Tokimitsu managed to get past him and score their third goal of the match, leaving the scores 3-1. The thought of them losing then starts to creep up into Isagi's head, as he realizes that all of them have an outstanding power within them. But that's when Ryo comes by alongside Nagi. Ryo apologizes for ignoring him, but telling them that he will play with both of them from now on. And all of them then get super fired up as they restart the game again. Now it goes pretty alright for a start. All three of them play together. However, they make minimal progress as they struggle to get past Team Rin. After a while of just going back and forth, they decide to go for it, and Isagi passes the ball to Nagi. It looks like he is about to trap the ball. However, instead, he makes a pass to Ryo on his right. Now, as they believed that Nagi would trap the ball, both Ryu and Tokimitsu went to block him, but as he instead sent it to Ryo, Ryo is now completely free. However, even then, he was a bit on the outside, so his shooting angle wasn't that great, but he saw Isagi free, so he decided to send a cross over to him. Isagi thinks that they are finally going to get their second goal, but that's when Rin instead comes by and knocks Isagi off balance just when he is about to shoot. This leads to the ball hitting the goalpost, but luckily the ball falls over to Nagi, who puts it into the net. Even though Isagi didn't score, he was still happy, and all of them went to celebrate together, thinking that they were now one step closer to winning. After that, pretty much the same thing happens. Isagi has been able to predict the game more, and when Rin shoots the ball right from the kickoff, he actually manages to save it from going in, thinking that he has the power to actually rival Rin in this game, but after that, Rin easily scores from the corner, shocking everyone. However, it's not lost just yet, as there was still one more goal, so they decided to really give it their all, and Nagi started to get more and more frustrated, as he really didn't want to lose, like Isagi and Ryo, of course. But even though they put in their best efforts to try and turn the match around, it just wasn't enough due to the sheer difference between the two teams. And in the end, Team Isagi lost with the scores being 5-2, just like the original, and Rin scored the last goal. Now not much changes when it comes to Team Rin picking who he wants either, as the reason why they picked Bachira was because they wanted someone who could assist them, and as both Nagi and Isagi were mostly goal-oriented, I'm sure that Tokimitsu and Ryu would without a doubt pick Ryo to join them. Rio would obviously not want to join, as he would have to leave Nagi, but he was left with no choice. Nagi didn't know what to say, and Rio just left, telling Nagi that he would be waiting for him, but then leaving both Nagi and Isagi in shock that they had just lost. Anyway, that was the first part of what I think would have happened if Isagi had gone to Rio and Nagi. Now, honestly, it's pretty mid so far, and I haven't written that many what-ifs before, so I apologize for that. But let me know if you want me to continue on this series, and then I will try and make it more interesting as I get better and better. Anyway, if you like Blue Lock and videos like this, then I would highly suggest you subscribe to this channel. And while you are at it, leave a comment and a like, as it helps out with the algorithm a ton. And if you are curious to see another video of mine, then please watch the video that will be popping up on the screen now. Anyway, thanks for watching and have a great day. Bye.